All right, welcome to Anatomy Lesson 7.03, the anatomy of a myofibril. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to get down the rest of our vocabulary that we're going to need to talk about sarcomere contraction. So what we have, let's talk about these diagrams first. What I have up top is a skeletal muscle fiber. It's the whole thing. And we've talked in the past about the fact that it's multinucleated. So here's all my nuclei. And this is a cross section. Again, this muscle cell could go for a really, really long ways. But we've said in the past we have striations or stripes. Well, on the overall structure, you've got light colored bands. So we have, what they did here was they pulled out one myofibril. And they took that myofibril and they expanded it in three different views. So this is one type of view, the second type of view, and the third type of view. The middle view is what we would see under a microscope. So if you look at muscle tissue under a scope, it's going to look something like this if you zoomed in close. And this is a schematic or a sketch or graphic, GRAFIC, of the overall. And down here is a graphic of just the actin and myosin. But what's important to note is that these are the same structure. So if I look, if you notice I've got a zigzag here, well, it turns out I've got a zigzag running up through the center of that, though it's very light, and I've got a zigzag here. And I've got a zigzag here. There's this very light, faint color in the middle is because there's a zigzag there. And then I've got a zigzag here. And I have two of these. So when you are looking, when we're talking about muscle contraction, we use the word sarcomere. And a sarcomere, let's do some definitions here too. Sarcomere, what color do I want to do? Stick with blue. So a sarcomere is a contracting unit of muscle contraction. So one skeletal muscle cell can have 50 to 2,000 myofibrils. And when a myofibril contracts, each of the single sarcomeres shortens. So let's also say this is a relaxed, these are all relaxed. So we're looking at a relaxed sarcomere, relaxed muscle fiber. And we'll look at the difference between relaxed and contracted here in a bit. But again, to talk intelligently about this, we have to understand the vocabulary. So this is what a sarcomere is. Where it is between two Z lines. Between two Z lines. So that's why this is one sarcomere. This represents a single sarcomere, and this represents a single sarcomere. That's sarcomere number one, sarcomere number two. So why the stripes? Where do all of the variations come from? Well, one of the first things you're going to notice is that on myofibrils we'll alternate a light area with a dark, with a light with a dark. The light areas are called eye bands. And I always remember that because light has an eye and eye bands has an eye. And then we have dark bands, and we call those A bands. A for dark, A for A band. And we can see those here. So you know what? I should give white out. Let's color code this. I'm going to do the I bands in green, and I'm going to do the what colors going to show up really well. Let's do A bands in purple. This is purple. So if you notice, the closest one-to-one to this is this, and you can see here I have an I band. And that's why they say I band right here. And here I have an I band. And notice right in the middle of the I bands are the Z lines. So we've got those Z lines that run right down the center. And then I have in purple A bands. So here's an A band. Whoops, shoot. Okay, I cannot white that out. So can I? I can't. You have to pretend like that didn't happen because I'm not going to re-record for that. So I've got my A bands. I've got 2 A bands here, and I've got 2 full I bands. Okay, I have to fix it. I don't think I made it better. I didn't. All right. All right. No more time wasted on that. So why do they show up? What's going on? I think the easiest way to understand it is to look down here at the filament arrangement. So we have myosin are the thicker, and actin, remember actin, are the thinner. So the black here are the actin, and the red are the myosin. Myosin filaments have these strange, I'm going to grab brown because I think that's going to show up really well. These strange little knobs that come off of them. So when we look at this myosin, if we look at one end of that, we get these structures that stick off. These are called cross bridge heads. And what they're going to do is they're going to bind to the actin, but each of these little guys is called a cross bridge head. And that's why the myosin looks so much thicker. These actin then are not only, I'm going to grab a highlighter for this. I'm going to do a pink highlighter. So notice the actin, they're attached to each other through the Z lines. So these Z lines, the actin fibers come off of the Z lines. Show up as well as I wanted it to. How about that? A little better. And over here as well, you can see that the actin anchors to the Z line. So let's note that out. The actin anchor to the Z line. Well, look at the I band. So on a relaxed sarcomere, you notice that I band? What filaments do I have in the I band? Just actin. That's why it appears lighter, because if you're looking at this and you're like shining a light from underneath, there's not as many fibers there to obscure the light coming through. So the I bands are all actin. Let's put that up here too. So that's why they appear lighter. The I bands are 100% actin. The A bands are a little more complicated. And I don't know if you can notice, but in the center, so up here we get a good example of an A band. There's an area here in the middle that's just a little bit lighter than the rest of it. Well, let's look at our fiber arrangements. So down here, we're looking at this all the way down. What do I have going on here in the middle? What kind of fibers? Did you say myosin? So this lighter area down through the middle is called the H zone. and it's anchored at the middle with an M line. So we have the H zone here down through the center, and then we have an anchor point called the M line for middle. Look at the rest of the A band. What kind of fiber arrangement do we have? Well, this is myosin, actin, myosin, actin, myosin, actin, myosin, actin. So it turns out the darkest part of the A band has both actin and myosin. But the H zone is myosin only. Myosin only. So the coloration is directly correlated to the type of fiber that we have. All right, let's recap this. And before I do, let me add, at any point in this chapter, if you feel like you want more than one video, this is a good chapter to pick up extra videos. There are lots of great anatomy videos. Some people like Crash Course. Some people like to just Google. If you put in a myofibril anatomy, you'll probably get one that has some interactive graphics. If you're confused about this is usually the point where students begin to go, oh my goodness, this is pretty complex stuff. So before we close this down, let's go back over what we learned. We took one myofibril, and we noticed that it has light color bands and dark color bands. We call the light bands I bands and the dark bands A bands. And then there's these Z lines. They zigzag, Z for zigzag. And we talk about the whole muscle contraction in terms of a single sarcomere. But if we've got 20 to 2,000 myofibrils per muscle cell, and every myofibril has 10,000 sarcomeres, you're talking about millions of sarcomeres that contract when a muscle contracts. So if we look at the fiber arrangement, we can understand why some areas appear lighter and why some areas appear darker. So for these I bands, the Z line runs right down the middle, and we have actin coming off on either side. You can see that here as well. The actin is thin, so light's able to pass through there easier. If you look at the A bands, that's where we have most of it. We have actin and myosin, except here in the middle, we get the center section that's just a little bit lighter. That's only myosin, and we have a line in the middle that anchors it called the M line. So we've got the H zone and the M line. We're going to do a lot more with these on the myosin filament, these cross bridge heads, but that gets us the vocabulary that we need. So that's all we've got for this video, and thanks for watching.